All right, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? No. No? Open your ears up.
No, it sounds like you're going through a bad radio station. It sounds like an actual
Is that true? Yeah? Okay. Maybe I just was standing too close to the microphone, huh? Okay. Everyone feeling good? How's everyone feeling? Woo! I'll take it. I'm Cam, and I'm going to be giving a talk called Getting 50,000 Companies on Board with Clojure, a Tale of Intrigue and Woe. Actually, bait and switch. Now that I have your attention, welcome to my MLM presentation. Staff, lock the doors, you know? You're about to embark upon a journey of empowerment and financial freedom. You know what, you guys? I'm going to call an audible and switch it back. New title. It's called Easy Made Simple. Brat Summer is officially over. It's time for the Clojure conj 2024 unofficial keynote. All right, let me tell you a little bit about myself. You know, you've heard of Yosemite Sam. I'm Yosemite Cam. You guys know me. You do now, at least, right? I'm an aspiring celebrity. That's why I'm giving this talk, you know. I need to get my social media exposure out there. Founding engineer and chief architect of Metabase. I live in SoCal. Every day is a nice, beautiful 72-degree day at the beach in SoCal, you know. My sun sign is Aries. You know, I did not see this in anyone else's About Me slides. A little bit disappointed, but you know, I'm going to go all in and tell you my rising sign, also known as Ascendant, is Sagittarius. And for everyone out here who's not well versed in astrology, the quick and simple explanation is, you know, a rising sign represents how others perceive you, you know? So, I mean, I didn't need to tell you that. My moon sign is Scorpio, okay? Your moon sign, by the way, if you don't know this, for the two people in the audience who don't, you know, represents your inner self. And I've been writing Clojure since 2012, I think, full-time since 2015. So not as long as some of the people here, but for a while, you know. So I've seen the ups and downs, you know, the good releases, the bad ones. Just kidding, they're all good, right? Let me tell you a little bit about my birds. It's happy hour, 2-for-1 cockatiels right now. These are my birds, Scrambles and Noodles, and my pet toucan, rest in peace. I had a rescue toucan for a long time, but now I have these 2 cockatiels, which are worth 4 cockatiels in the bush, as they say. I'm a friend of the birds, you know. Oh, I just told you, these are my pet birds, and my birds can whistle September by Earth, Wind, and Fire, and you know, I can't even do that, you know. So that's pretty good. I'm always impressed by that. Every day, they just wake me up at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., time to start singing. You know, what a way to start your day, right? They're not angry birds most of the time. I've never seen them attack a green pig, but to be fair, I have not given them the opportunity, so maybe that's not true at all. And my birds have mad riz, you know, as the Gen Z TikTokers say. They do, they really do. Okay, what will you learn from this unofficial keynote? That's the big question on everyone's mind. You've already learned the difference between sun signs, rising signs, and moon signs, right? That's done. You can cross that off of your to-do list, right? I know everybody's thinking, man, I gotta come back from Clojure conj with a little bit more knowledge about astrology. And now you can say you did. I'll tell you about the best crystals to keep on your desk for productive programming. And keep your energy clear too, right? Keep your mind sharp with crystals. How to do manifestations on the astral plane to help you refactor large legacy code bases. That's if you manifest on the astral plane, you reach your higher self more easily. That's what they say. How to incorporate a tarot reading into a pull request review. The true story of how John McCarthy invented Lisp on an ayahuasca retreat in Big Sur. Little known fact, you know, he didn't like to talk about it, but that's where he came up with the idea of parentheses, you know? Parentheses didn't just come out of the ether, right? Definitive proof that the moon landing was faked. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, right? You guys are... And something serious, why Metabase switched from Python to Clojure and never looked back? Back emoji. And of course, entertaining stories from managing a big old open source Clojure project. Tools that keep us sane and some neat tooling we built that you might find useful or at least inspirational, or maybe a little bit of both. Every good talk has to have a dictionary definition, right? This was, you guys seen that one, every Clojure talk ever, and this is like what they started out with, right? Mandatory dictionary definition slide. So I'm gonna tell you, this is not even in any dictionary. If you find a dictionary with this, with Metabase on there, throw that in the trash, it's a fake dictionary. Metabase is a noun, or is it a verb? It's both actually, it's a noun and a verb. An open source business intelligence data analytics tool written in Clojure. The verb is to business intelligence, I think, that's the meaning of the verb. What the heck is business intelligence? So I'm gonna show you a little, I just took this off our marketing website, I'm gonna show you a little video demo. A picture is worth 1,000 words and a video is worth 1,000 pictures, so a video is worth 1,000,000 words, they say. So this is kind of like the bread. This is a very quick, fast-paced demo of what our product does, you know. What you do, you go click a bunch of buttons. I wanna see orders, you know, in Canada, total volume of sales broken out by month or something, or in the US, and then make it look pretty, right? Everybody likes to look at their data and make it look pretty. That's cool. Not everybody knows SQL, you know, so you can go click a bunch of buttons, and then we actually transpile that to 20 flavors of SQL. Every different database that uses SQL has to make it just different enough that to keep us busy, keep us on our toes. That's how I like to think about it, you know. And we also support MongoDB and Druid. We're doing Google Analytics for a while. Elasticsearch is in the works. So it's actually pretty neat that we can have people click a bunch of buttons and then come up with the query that actually gives you what you just clicked in all these different databases, and then slap it on the screen and let you do something useful with it. Is Metabase too big to fail in terms of code base size? We have 1,600 Clojure source files in our project. There are 325,000 lines of Clojure, if you count our tests and source code. The Gen Z influencers on TikTok say that Clojure is so expressive that one line of Clojure is equal to 10 lines of Python. That's what they say. So really, if you think about it, Metabase is like 3 million lines of code. That's what I tell people. Why do we have so much code? Users love features. You know, there's a very famous quote about that. Features are life, and that's a Winston Churchill quote. Yeah, you'll find that in any biography worth its salt about how features are life, you know. Said that every day. Obligatory, we're hiring slide. We are actually hiring like a ton of people, like a metric ton of people even. That's actually a little bit smaller than a imperial ton, isn't it? So never mind. We are hiring an imperial ton of people, at least like 5 to 10 more people on the Clojure side. I don't know, but we're hiring for all sorts of things, you know? So we have a team of like 80 people right now, 80-ish, 40 of them, 40 of which are engineers. We're half Clojure, half JavaScript, so it's like 20 Clojure engineers already. Some people say we have smart and cool people at our company, you know? Maybe that's just wishful thinking, but maybe it's just me saying that, but it's what I like to tell myself. We're fully remote, we have people all over the world. People in North America, Europe, we have someone in Thailand. I'll tell you a little bit more about how that makes things interesting, having such a big distribution of people. I'm now gonna pause for 5 to 10 minutes so everyone gets a chance to scan this QR code and fill out an application. And then I'll do some lightning interviews after this talk later today. All right, I'll wait. Just kidding, just kidding. Actual content, fun time's over everyone. Now we gotta actually do some real talking, you know. This is not supposed to be a stand-up hour, is it? So I will actually tell you some useful stuff now. Why did we go all in on Clojure, right? As I was saying earlier, we did the original version in Python and Django in 2014. And why did we switch? Lots of reasons. Biggest one, Docker wasn't a thing that anyone heard of back then. So deploying a Python application, wow, what a nuisance. You know, even just setting up a dev environment was like a hassle. Like, I mean, I didn't set this stuff up, but when I came out to the company, we were like, oh, just install VirtualBox and virtualenv and all this other stuff. And it's like a half-day project just to even be able to get your dev environment set up, right? What a hassle. And of course, trying to tell someone else how to do that, especially if they're like not technical, like what a horrible nightmare. I still have nightmares about it to this day. Oh, you want to run Metabase, just install VirtualBox, virtual env, and then configure this config file and do all that. Yeah. 5 thumbs down. Another reason, Python's global interpreter lock made running lots of long-running analytics queries in the background a hassle. And I know someone's going to come up to me afterwards, but you could get around that if you do blah, 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 blah. It's just, the thing with Clojure, you don't have to do blah, blah, blah to get around stuff, right? So it's just hassle. Say less, right? So we really want to switch to something on JVM. We like the idea of being able to tell people, just run java-jar, metabase.jar. One of the big selling points of a JVM-based language, besides easy deployment, is the high quality of libraries, Well, I guess as high as they can be. JDBC drivers for almost every database under the sun, right? Being able to leverage that. And we actually did consider Scala and Clojure, and even maybe just writing Java. And so maybe it's a little bit anachronistic, but I'm going to do a 2023 style Clojure conj decision matrix and kind of tell you why we picked Clojure. Well, number one, maybe less important now, but back in 2014 or whatever, hipster street cred on Hacker News, got to get that, right? So Clojure was cool, still is cool actually, but especially back then, kind of a new exciting thing. Oh man, if we use Clojure, everyone's gonna be so excited. So Java, negative street cred, right? So if we wrote it in Java, like, people would run away, right? Run for the hills, right? Clojure, fast and fun to write. This was actually a big thing too. When we were considering Scala and Clojure, I'd done a little bit of Clojure in the past, and so I was like somewhat familiar with it, right? I thought it was super cool. I'm like, wow, I could port this whole Python application in Clojure in a week, and I mostly did, and that was kind of what sold the rest of the team on Clojure, right? I think in like a week of Scala, you would maybe have like, I don't know, maybe one REST API endpoint done or something, but it's a little bit more verbose, right? Clojure, good for data processing. And Java and Scala are good for that too, but Clojure just really makes it nice and easy. You don't have to spend a bunch of time playing the types game, right? And it just kind of lets you it was like a language almost written to do what we're doing, right? So is it familiar? Yeah, I'd used it previously. Scala, heck no. I don't have time to learn all that stuff, dude, seriously. And everyone's written at least one Java is the technical term, I think. So that would be a point in Java's favor, right? And I will say this, Scala and Java, have static typing, so you can pretend you don't have to write tests, right? If it compiles, that's it, ship it. Clojure, we actually have to write tests, which is maybe a blessing and a curse, right? Maybe a blessing, Overall, all the greens, Clojure has all these greens, everything else is red, orange, yellow, green, mix. So Clojure, clear choice, As promised, I'm now going to tell you a little bit about our experience using Clojure as a big open source company. So this is a real experience report. Pits and peaks. Pit or peak? Hiring. Is it easy to hire people in Clojure or not? Is this a pit or a peak? I'd say peak. A bunch of negative Nancy's told us that switching to Clojure would make it impossible for us to hire people. And you know what? We proved them wrong, so. We've had the opposite experience. Clojure's been a big selling point, and people have applied because they wanted to work in Clojure. I'd say probably 80% of the people that I interview are like, oh yeah, Clojure is like, I'm really looking for a job in Clojure, or I am already a Clojurist and would never switch to another language even if you held a gun to my head. So yeah, so that's been a big selling point. People don't even care what we're building. They're just like, oh, Clojure, cool. Maybe this is more wishful thinking on my part, but I think Clojure is like a little bit self-selecting, which is good for candidate quality. And by that, I mean, people don't really go to Clojure code boot camps, or learn. I think I've talked to someone once who learned Clojure in college, Not a lot of people just learn it because they have to do homework. Not the way you do Python or JavaScript, right? So people have to go kind of learn Clojure on their own, mostly. And the people who are curious and want to go learn Clojure, I think, are the kind of people we like to hire. So that's been kind of good. It's maybe we don't have as many candidates, but we have higher quality candidates. Quality over quantity, that's what they say. We've hired a lot of people without professional Clojure experience in the past, actually, too. So even we've hired people who are like, I want to learn Clojure. Clojure sounds cool. But they have not written it, and we've actually had a pretty good experience kind of onboarding people onto Clojure, especially if they came from like a background doing other FP languages, functional languages like Erlang, helps people get up to speed. JVM experience, if you're writing Java, if you're in like some corporate Java shop and doing that, if you can reverse the Java brain rot, then you actually kind of already have a leg up, right? Because probably you've used JDBC before, stuff like that, right? But we've hired people with none of that, people coming from like the Python world, and they've still picked up Clojure. Once you wrap your head around the little parentheses, right? Pit or peak, open source in a niche language. I'd say this is mixed, actually. Open source is an interesting journey, We get these drive-by pull requests from people who are clearly writing Clojure for the first time. It's a fun way to start your day, I don't know. What do they say? You could write like C in any language or whatever. So see some of that, They're not doing a good job writing Clojure for the first time a lot of times. Sometimes you just gotta say thank you, but please write some tests or something. I don't know. I think it would be worse though, actually, if our project was in Python, then we'd probably get 10 times as many random pull requests, right? So. I think this is true of every open source project. We have a lot of people who need to touch grass demanding that we fix it now, Actually, I just can't help but laugh, People use use our product for free, and then they're like, oh, you must fix my issue right now. I think it's entertaining, though. We do actually get a few great pull requests, actually, and we've hired people this way. People come by and are like, oh, well, I use Metabase for blah, 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 and it has this bug, and here's a PR to fix it. And then we've actually hired a few people who are like, wow, this is great. I did not know how you managed to figure that out, but do you want a job? So, so I think that's kind of one of the cool things about open source is that you could kind of get those kind of people that you would not get in a closed source project, right? And here's another pit or peak. We are a mix of JavaScript and TypeScript, React, Redux on the front end, and a little bit of ClojureScript. Is this good or bad? Would I recommend this in 2024? Don't do it. We're all Clojure on the back end, but for pragmatic reasons, which is mostly just I did not know how to do ClojureScript at the time. Our front end is mostly JavaScript and TypeScript. And we do have some ClojureScript now, and we're getting more. The ratio is shifting in the favor of ClojureScript, but now we have a bunch of JavaScript-specific people, and not everyone wants to learn ClojureScript. I know crazies, but so we'll probably have JavaScript for a long time. A mix of both. I've seen all these other talks. I have Clojure conj this week, and I'm just green with envy with all these people are like, oh man, my front end is in ClojureScript, but I have this one problem that I wish I could have the same problems as you guys, I'm kind of green with envy about that. I'm here trying to keep up with all the new frameworks of the week in JavaScript, Blink and there's a new framework, everyone's switching over to it. But it seems like the ClojureScript world, a little bit more slow moving and stable. Maybe less pressure to keep up with the frameworks. And yeah, so I wish I could be like you guys, Anyways, the Gen Z say hindsight is 2020, and in hindsight, we would have done a little bit differently. Starting a new project, I think I'd do a full ClojureScript, front end. But sometimes you just gotta lie in the bed you made, right? We made our bed, now we will lie in it. Okay, moving on. I'm gonna tell you some things we love, okay? Things we love about working with Clojure, libraries that we use extensively. If I forget a library that you wrote and we're using it, this is not a negative anti-endorsement against your library or whatever. I don't have enough time to mention all the great libraries out there. And also just keep your eyes peeled on my slides for fun facts about spiders. You know, it's spooky season, and in that theme, keep a lookout. Favorite, we love CLJ Condo. You get a linter, you get a linter. Everyone here gets a linter, right? That's right. Do not sleep on Condo, you guys. If you have one take-home point from this slide, this talk, Condo, 500 thumbs up, you know? It makes every part of our lives easier. I'm not like, I sleep easier because of Condo. Like, where do I even stop with Condo? Here's an example. We're refactoring something, mark it deprecated, and then you can add CLJ Condo, ignore comments to existing usages, and then people go try to use this old pattern, and it says Condo warning deprecated. Don't do this, And then it is a gentle reminder not to do things the old way. Do things a new way instead, right? So that's just one example. And then that kind of lets you slowly phase out, refactor out old patterns at a leisurely pace, It doesn't have to be all at once. It's kind of hard to do all at once sometimes with 1,600 source files. So do it like kind of piecemeal. Do a few here, a few there until it's gone. We have a mountain, a literal mountain, a figurative mountain actually, of custom linters to enforce rules, I'll give you some examples of different linters we have. We have one that says require forms in your ins declarations must follow how to ins rules, wrap everything in vectors, do this, do that, a little bit stricter than the built-in linters to Condo. We have one that functions that use thread and safe stuff that end in exclamation marks should themselves end in exclamation marks. I call it the viral exclamation mark linter. And then that way, you don't accidentally forget to put that somewhere, and then someone else goes around thinking, oh, this must be a pure function. Hard to forget when it has an exclamation mark, right? Tests that call functions ending in exclamation mark should not be marked parallel. So with our test runner, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a second, we run a lot of stuff in parallel. If you put metadata on it, that says parallel. But very bad idea to be using thread and safe stuff in parallel tests, right? So we just have a little linter that'll say, don't do this. We have namespaces. We have a linter that tells you have to mark namespaces that run tests against our different database drivers with a tag so that we know this specific namespace is running driver tests. And then in CI, we can actually just go through and only run tests in these namespaces, right? And it's impossible to mess it up because Condo will say you need to tag this namespace with this tag because it's testing drivers, right? And so we don't need to run, if we're like running tests against MySQL or Oracle or something, we don't need to run the entire test suite that's doing all this stuff that is not related to running queries against Oracle, right? So just another cool linter that we use. And we have a linter if your tests are too long. 300 line def test, in my opinion, too long. I can't read that. My editor does not display 300 lines of code at once. So a gentle warning, break this up into smaller tests, right? And I could go on and on. We even have tests for our custom Condo hooks and linters. Yeah, these linters are so important to us that we have to have tests around them, Test the linter, lint the test that test the linter. It's a magic circle, Another thing that is important for writing your own Condo hooks is adding LSP jump to definition support. If you have something that is using, or I guess like a keyword, something you declare a keyword, maybe you have like a schema registry with Molly and you have like this keyword, you're defining the schema associated with this keyword, then you could go in and write a little Condo hook to say, this keyword is defined right here. And then in LSP, when you do jump to definition, it'll actually jump to that spot. So you could do that with all your custom macros and stuff. We love Molly on that note. Here's icebreaker for tonight's after party. What's the Molly schema for a skibbity toilet? Think about that. Discuss, okay? We put Molly schemas on figuratively everything. We have custom versions of function and def-in and def-method, like the ones in Schema. And I know you guys are going to say, well, Muller already has that. It's only experimental. We have a couple of improvements over the version there. There's some issues with schemas on destructure arguments and variadic functions that we fixed. Better memory usage. I think we were using the ones in Mali experimental, but they actually created a new validator for every function, which made our application crash because we use so many of them. So we have, locally, we have one that shares the validators. And it's open in PRs for these fixes upstream on my to-do list, but it's an amazing world to live in either way. We have schema validation on in the REPL and when running tests and disable in production, so you don't have to worry about any kind of like performance impact, but then you can get all this extra type checking for free. It catches so much stuff, it's unbelievable. Wow. And just kind of enforces assumptions too, right? And maybe you've had this schema that says this should look like that, and something comes in and it's different, then it kind of forces you to go back and say, well, did my function, do I need to update my function, or you got to kind of like think about your assumptions, right? So here's an example of the macro expansion of our def-in macro, and I know what you guys are thinking. What's up with all these anaphors, right? Do you not know about autogens and cam? I think it's actually important to make the macro expansion readable, so when you expand it, you can actually kind of see what's going on. And if you look at the macro expansion, you got the arguments A, B, that are not actually in any place that the underlying function will ever see, so it's not hurting anyone, okay? And then when you write your own macros like this, you can generate real nice documentation, so we do that too. I guess Schema did that too, right? But these are just little things that with Clojure you can get for free, right? So another thing that you should take home with you to the bank, you can use emojis as function names in Clojure. You should absolutely do this all the time. If anyone here pushes a library where everything is an emoji, every function name, as long as they're like kind of somewhat obvious, like plus sign emoji for plus, right? That makes sense, right? I'm going to use that library every day. Here's another thing we love. We love HoneySQL 2. We stan HoneySQL 2, actually, as the Gen Zs would say. We started out with Korma back in the Stone Ages, and we switched to HoneySQL 1 when it came out, then HoneySQL 2 a few years ago. And we built tons of stuff on top of HoneySQL 2. It's an intermediate compilation target when we generate the 20 flavors of SQL I was talking about earlier. We take the query that you built out in the GUI, and then one of the stages along the way is generating HoneySQL, kind of transforming that internal representation of the query into HoneySQL, and then that into SQL, and then you go run it. So it's really kind of made things a little bit easier by letting us kind of not have to do the entire thing ourselves. We have little mountain and multi-methods, I like to say, for spitting out little snippets of HoneySQL for different flavors of SQL and for doing different things. We have wrappers around HoneySQL so we can pass type information around, know what the type of a HoneySQL expression is. And I know what you're thinking, why the heck would you need that? BigQuery, if anyone here has used it, knows that it's the most fussy database in the world. And you have to have different functions for things like you want to truncate a date time versus a timestamp. In Postgres, you can one function does everything, right? In BigQuery, you have to use a date time truncate or timestamp truncate or whatever, different functions for everything. So kind of important for us to preserve this type information so we can later kind of go back and say, use the right function, right? So yeah, with that, we can pass around little snippets of HoneySQL to different functions and then do the right thing based on the type information. Sean, I don't know if you're here, but he's been amazing at answering our dumb questions and fixing dumb bugs before we can even catch our breath. I can't count how many times I've said, Sean, this is we found this bug in HoneySQL. Would you accept the pull request? And he's like, I've already fixed it, And this is at 9 p.m. sometimes too. I don't even know. Maybe, does this man even sleep? Who knows? Buy him a beer if you see him later. Other libraries we love, too many to count, We love Shadow CLJS, Macrovich for writing macros that have different expansions in ClojureScript versus Clojure. Marginalia, pretty cool. Documentation, 100 thumbs up. One of our metabasers is actually taking over maintenance of Marginalia recently. That's how much we love it. Potemkin, controversy. I know some of you guys don't like it, but we love to kind of collect what we consider like the public-facing API of different modules of our code base all into one little namespace, and then just you can use everything you need in that one namespace, you know. Clojure community style guide. It's very easy to keep everyone on the same page when you can just say, this is what the style guide says, right? So that's the trump card in our arguments about style. And we like CLJ format. We actually just started using it, and it's a game changer, you know. So get on board with that, you guys, or the standard Clojure format from yesterday, right? Formatting is 10 thumbs up. Too many more to mention, too many to count. I'll tell you a little bit about some cool stuff we've built. Maybe you'll find these interesting or entertaining. We have our own test runner. It's called Hawk. It's built on top of EF-test. Why? There's a few things that we do on top of EF-test that you might find cool. We have kind of line-again style only support. So if you do CLJ-X, whatever, then you could do only right there on the command line and have it run only a specific directory or only a specific namespace or even only a specific var. Or you could wrap it in a vector and then do only like 2 vars if you want. We have support for writing namespace patterns and having it kind of look for those namespaces automatically and have it exclude certain directories. Wrote some custom JUnit output code on top of that. We have tools to make sure that tests are not initializing or you're not doing something in a parallel test. So if you have something thread unsafe and you don't want to write your own custom condo macro to make sure people are not using it in a parallel test, then you could just somewhere in that function assert test is not, or assert I'm not in a parallel test, and then the test it'll throw an exception and that test will fail, and then people will remember not to use it in a parallel test, right? I just built out some tools for partitioning tests into, I think we have like 6,000 tests, and running them all at once takes a while. But what if you just ran one job, runs 3,000, one runs the other 3,000, right? So I built out some tools for that, and that has sped up our CI a lot. So we got a lot of cool stuff there. Check it out, everyone. Here's some examples. Oh, this is actually the best feature of Hawk. We have equalsquestionmark is what we named it. It's kind of like, I don't know if anyone's seen like expectations or whatever, a little bit like that, but maybe a little bit more flexible even. So it does a few things. Number one is if you specify the keys in a map in the expected side of an assertion, then it only checks those keys. So you can have additional keys in whatever the actual side is, right? So right here I'm saying I should have keys A, B, and C, but maybe actually the map, the actual value has A, B, C, D, E, F, right? It doesn't care about that. So that's kind of cool. You don't have to go up, every time you add like a new column to a table, you don't have to go update 500 tests anymore. We appreciate that. You can also, instead of just passing in raw values, you can pass in a function or a regular expression, and it just kind of does the right thing. Like here we're saying A has to be a UUID. It doesn't literally have to be that function. It will just run that function against the value and say yes or no. And then, of course, we have condo linters around this stuff. To make this work in ClojureScript, at the time of this writing, you have to go require a file to make it work in ClojureScript. So, you know, write a condo linter to remind you about that, right? If it's in a CLJC file or a CLJS file, a condo linter will say. And you could see an example of that in my photo on the bottom. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip a few of these slides. I don't know why I picked animations that are so slow, you know. Okay. Oh my God. Just okay. Here's something else cool. I'll talk about this one. Here's something cool we built. We built out I18N framework, you know, and it's actually pretty sweet. Like here, it validates the number of arguments at macro expansion time and with the condo linter. So If you are not using condo because you are a crazy person, then it'll actually, when you try to load that namespace or whatever, the macro expansion will say, well, you have one placeholder argument in your IE2 string, but you're not passing in an argument, wrong number of arguments, error. So don't forget you can do stuff like that in macro expansions, right? It works in Clojure and ClojureScript. For ClojureScript, it uses the JavaScript library tag. And we actually have Clojure-based tooling to build the artifacts for both JVM and JSON files for JavaScript. And we also have tooling to kind of walk the code, look for all your usages of these macros, generate POT files. What we do, then we use PO editor for community-based translation. So we have a script to upload our POT files to PO editor, send out a little email, and then we have another script to download the update of the PO files with the translations, and convert those to Eden for consumption by Clojure, and JSON for consumption by JavaScript, right? So it's pretty cool to build all this tooling in Clojure and have it do, kind of use the same language to build your application to build like the resources for the application that you build the application itself in. So more slow transitions, huh? Another thing we're working on lately is SQL parsing with the new library we have called Macaw. And I forgot to put a link to this, but you can go onto GitHub. I think it's github/metabase/Macaw. And so we're working on SQL parsing, and it's definitely a work in progress. It doesn't support like all the wacky like Postgres JSON operators and stuff yet, but it will at some point. So we built this on top of JSQL parser, which is a Java library for parsing SQL, but we had to do a lot of custom stuff. So I don't know how long that's going to last. I think we'll probably have to fork it at some point, and then at that point, why don't we just do it all in Clojure? So keep your eyes peeled on that. This is something that our customers want. And so we have to kind of build it, and I'm sure everyone else might find it useful too. So I'll skip this one too in the interest of time, since there's just so much to say, you guys. We have so much more stuff that I don't even have time to talk about. We have a fork of SAML20CLJ that I think is the fork everyone uses now. I have a library called Methodical that does CLOS style multi-methods, the common Lisp style, in Clojure. You can add before and after auxiliary methods around stuff, different method combinations. Why would you want to do that? What does that even mean? Well, an example would be you can have it, tell it to run, instead of just running whatever method matches your dispatch value, you can have it run every method that matches your dispatch value. And that's actually how we implemented our event system in Metabase. We have a keyword event type, and then you write in number of methods that dispatch off of that event type or some keyword derived from it, and then you send an event and it just runs, 5 different methods. So that's kind of the canonical use case for something like that. Next method, if you want to call the next most specific method or like the default method for something. So there's a lot of cool stuff. Good talk on it. It's from Clojure North 2020. There's a talk by Saul about Methodical. Go check it out. We have some libraries who doing database interaction in a way that's impossible to forget to do. Like maybe you want to remove like the password value from like your user table or something. Just have it do that automatically every time you get a user of the database. Hydrate objects, and by that I mean maybe you have like a dashboard and you want to get all the different little charts associated with it. You can have it set up to do that automatically without running into N+1 type stuff, right? So cool tools for doing stuff like that. Check it out. I mentioned earlier, Tim McDonald, who's a Metabaser, is taking over Marginalia. We have a mountain of other libraries that I'm not going to talk about right now. And that's the end. So we are still hiring, but only for the next 10 minutes. So better scan this right now or else. I think I'm at time now. So I would take questions, but I got out of it by talking the exact right amount, so you'll have to ask me later.